Hey beauties! Welcome back to Beauty and the Beasts, where we take care of our skin and feed our fears with a little spooky bedtime story. Okay, before we begin tonight's tale, I need to give you a warning. If at any point during the story you start to feel strange, physically, mentally, or just an unshakable sense of unease, please stop watching right away. Because tonight's story isn't just an old urban legend. According to the person who shared this, the story is still unfolding, even now. And some people who've heard it have already started experiencing symptoms. Tonight's story was actually featured on Korea's popular horror show called Midnight Horror Story. So I guess some of you might already heard about this. But it originally gained attention in Japan. And what's even more chilling is what happened after the episode aired. Viewers started sending in their own terrifying experiences, all eerily similar, all warning that this curse might be spreading. So take this seriously. If you're not sure you're ready, it's okay to turn back now. But if you think you can handle it, then get comfortable, because I'm about to tell you everything. Let's begin. Today's story is the first-hand account of a Korean man who was studying abroad in Japan. And what started as a simple translation side job slowly destroyed his daily life, his body, and eventually even his family. So what exactly happened to the man who submitted the story? We don't know his real name, so let's just call him Kang Jin Lee. It was the summer of 2015. Kang Jin was living in a tiny one-room apartment on the outskirts of Tokyo in Nerima. He was studying abroad, chasing his dream of becoming a Japanese interpreter. His parents were supporting him financially, but just barely. So honestly, breathing felt like it cost money in that city. He couldn't afford anything beyond basic food and rent. No luxuries, no comforts. So to survive, Kang Jin quietly took up a weekend part-time job. But trying to balance studies and work in a foreign country, that is no easy task. Then one day, Kang Jin came across a strange job posting on a Korean website that catered to students studying abroad. Japanese horror story translation gig, 100,000 won per page, 1 million won bonus on completion. And the job sounded simple enough. Translate 17 Japanese horror stories into Korean. Once done, upload the translations to a Korean horror story forum. They promised not just payment per page, but an additional bonus if all 17 stories were completed. And 100,000 won per A4 page, plus a bonus just for finishing everything. This was the kind of opportunity you don't pass up. And of course, he did hesitate at first. The deal sounded way too good, almost too good. And there was something else strange. Why would they want the translations posted on a public Korean site instead of publishing them officially? Most translations are done for books or private collections, but this was just giving them away for free online. Still, despite the red flags, Kang Jin told himself that sometimes people just want content shared, and maybe they were paying well because the stories were that important. And to be honest, the money was hard to resist. And on top of that, it was a great chance to improve his Japanese. And all he had to do was sit in front of his computer. So he sent the application email. He didn't want to miss this. About 30 minutes after he sent the email, a reply immediately came in. The sender's name was Hasaki. He said, if the terms are acceptable, you can start right away. I've attached the materials you'll need. There were 3 attachments: a 괴담 본편 PDF, which is the main horror story document, upload guide, which is the instructions, and there was an image file named Ikai doll Real. Kang Jin immediately opened the files, but it was that last one, Ikai doll Real JPG, that stopped him cold. The image on screen was a doll, not just any doll. It was human-sized. The file said it stood exactly 125 centimeters tall. It had a short bob haircut and wore a red kimono. But the most disturbing thing was its face. The eyes were shut, but it felt like they could snap open at any moment. And the corners of its mouth were curled into a faint smile, like it was mocking you. There was something off, deeply off. It was just a picture, and yet, Kangjin couldn't bring himself to look directly into its face. It was unsettling, wrong, and it looked too real. It felt like if he looked too long, the thing in the photo might somehow look back. Trying to shake it off, Kangjin exhaled slowly, muttering to himself to calm down. But then he heard a crash. A loud, shattering noise came from the kitchen. Startled, Kangjin jumped to his feet and rushed over, only to find a plate smashed on the floor. And it didn't make sense. That plate wasn't on the edge of the counter. There was no reason it should have fallen. Still, he chalked it up to maybe a draft or a vibration from outside. Trying to stay calm, he knelt down to clean it up. And that is when it happened. He felt a sting. A piece of the broken ceramic had sliced his finger. Up until that point, Kangjin had no idea what he'd just gotten himself into. He later said, looking back, this was the moment I should have known. That was where it all began. Even now, he says he regrets not stopping the moment he felt that first wave of unease. After quickly cleaning up the broken plate, he sat back down and went straight to work. He couldn't afford to waste time, not with how tight money was. So he opened the first horror file. The title read, "The Woman on the Highway." The story began like this. It was a late night in 1971. A Japanese radio host named Junji Inagawa had just finished a midnight broadcast. While driving home down a nearly empty expressway, he caught sight of something strange on the shoulder. At first, he thought it was just a sign, but no, it was the back of a woman. And something was off. She looked unusually tall, nearly 2 meters. Then, slowly, she turned her head. Her face, long black hair, closed eyes, a faint, chilling smile. She looked exactly like the doll in the photo. Terrified, Chunji hit the gas and rushed home. But that wasn't the end of it. As he stepped inside, his wife looked at him and asked, "Hey, where's your friend?" "What friend?" "I heard footsteps in the living room just now. I thought someone came in with you." "What are you talking about?" And as Kangjin translated that line, he felt something, a shiver running down his arms, goosebumps. It wasn't just fear anymore. There was something deeper. An eerie tension that crawled under his skin. And suddenly Kangjin even found himself thinking, should I even keep going with this? But the money, he couldn't just walk away from it now. He figured maybe he was just shaken up because it was the first time he was reading such intense horror stories, and maybe he just wasn't used to it. So he pushed on, trying to focus. And just like that, the night crept into 2 a.m. He was in the middle of translating the third story when, click, click, he heard a noise. The sound came from the front door. Click, click. It was like someone was walking across the floor in heeled shoes. Slowly, carefully, Kangjin got up and tiptoed toward the entryway. He leaned in close and peeked through the small peephole on the door. And what he saw, he says he can never forget. Standing there, right outside his apartment, was the doll from the photo. Exactly the same. Red kimono, short bob haircut, eyes closed. That faint, haunting smile. No, I am seeing things. This is just my imagination. Kangjin whispered to himself, trying to stay calm. He slowly backed away from the door. But after that night, his life began to fall apart. Not all at once, but piece by piece, like something was quietly unraveling his world. And this wasn't just a simple ghost sighting anymore. From that night on, every single day at around 2 a.m., Kangjin started hearing the same sound again. Click, click. The sound of footsteps pacing just outside his front door. At first, he ignored it, but by the third night, he could tell. It wasn't just footsteps. He clearly heard breathing, a faint, soft exhale right outside his door. He later said, "That's when I knew. It wasn't just a doll. It wasn't just quiet like one. It was alive." After that, Kangjin's body started to change too. His right hand began trembling constantly. The muscles under his right eye twitched all day long. Something wasn't right, so he went back, determined to read the rest of the horror files more carefully. Story 4: Puppet Show. After translating the third tale, Kangjin moved on to the fourth. This one, Junji Inagawa, the narrator of these stories, received an invitation from a small regional theater troupe. They were putting on a horror-themed puppet play, using life-size doll on stage. On the first day of rehearsal, Junji stepped backstage, and that is when he saw it. A doll in a red kimono, with short black hair. He froze. His face turned pale. He said, "It's her. It's the same one I saw on the highway that night." Story 5: The Right Side Curse. As soon as the puppet show began, one of the lighting crew members broke his right arm. Then, a set designer fractured his right ankle. And the sound engineer, he suddenly developed severe tinnitus in his right ear. In total, 5 people from the production were rushed to the hospital that day. All of them had injuries, and all on their right side. And as Kangjin was translating this, he again felt a chill run down his spine. It was just a horror story, sure, but it mirrored his own situation too perfectly. His right hand, his right foot, his right eye. Why is it always the right side? Is this really just a coincidence? He couldn't sleep. Night after night, the same dream would come for him. In the dream, Kangjin stood at the end of the narrow alley. And at the far end, a child sat quietly, dressed in a red kimono. As he walked closer, the child slowly turned around, eyes closed, smiling. And then it ran toward him. But the way it ran was unnatural. Its right arm and leg were twisted at impossible angles, and as it sprinted forward, blood sprayed from his broken joints. In his dream, Kangjin would turn and run, helplessly, desperately. But even as he fled, he would realize something horrifying. His own arms and legs were starting to twist too. And when he woke up, the nightmare didn't end. Reality was worse. The corner of his mouth on the right side had started to curl upward, and when he looked in the mirror, his face looked slightly off balance, asymmetrical. Even when he wasn't smiling, his expression was beginning to resemble the doll in the photo. That's when he finally knew. This story is becoming real. Eventually, Kangjin couldn't take it anymore. Even though he had nearly finished all the translations, he emailed the requester, "I want to stop." But no reply came. In fact, the email bounced back. The address now showed as non-existent. Panicked, Kangjin went back to check the original job posting. It was gone, completely erased, like it never existed. And a few days later, something else happened. Kangjin got a phone call. His mother had been in an accident. She was in Korea. Apparently, she had gone to a nearby supermarket and was hit by a bicycle. But the strange thing was, the bike struck her on the left side, yet every single injury was on her right. Kangjin immediately booked the next flight and flew back to Korea. Her condition was serious. Her right forehead was sunken from the impact. Her right shoulder was fractured. Her right knee was torn open. And worst of all, doctors said there was a risk she could lose 2 toes on her right foot. One of the doctors even said, "This is unusual. Injuries isolated to one side like this, especially the right, are extremely rare." When Kang-jin heard those words, he almost collapsed right there in the hospital hallway. Is this the doll's curse? For the first time, he truly understood. Junji's story weren't just horror fiction. They were warnings, real ones. And now the curse had followed him home. Seeing his mother lying in that hospital bed, her body covered in bruises, cuts, and bandages, all on the right side, Kang-jin felt his chest tighten to the point he could barely breathe. This wasn't just a coincidence, but it didn't end there. On his way home from the hospital, Kang-jin got into a car accident. He had been driving when all of a sudden his mind went blank. He veered off the road and slammed into a guardrail. The car flipped, completely totaled. And then a crowd had gathered around the wreck. One man leaned in, shouting, "Hey, wake up! What happened to the person in the passenger seat?" Kang-jin could only stare back, dazed. There was no one in the car with him. He was alone. But someone had seen a person in the passenger seat, and they said they were waving. Thankfully, Kang-jin survived the crash with minor injuries, far less than expected. But emotionally, he was wrecked. His mother's accident, now this crash, and whoever or whatever was sitting in the passenger seat waving. And that was it. He made up his mind. I am done with the job, with the stories, with everything. He deleted all the files, or at least tried to. Some of them wouldn't delete. No matter what he did, they stayed. So finally, he gave in. Maybe if I finish them, the nightmare will stop. Up until now, he had translated 10 out of the 17 stories. There were 7 left. And something told him those last 7 held the truth, the real truth behind everything. So he continued translating. Story 11. A junior producer at the broadcast station noticed something strange in a group photo taken on set. In the far corner of the image, a doll was sitting. But here's the thing, no one had seen that doll on set. It wasn't part of the shoot. It wasn't supposed to be there. The next day, that same producer died in a car accident. His right ribs and right arm were both broken when they found him. Story 12. During an interview, Junji Inagawa was asked, "What's the scariest experience you've ever had?" He paused for a moment, then quietly said, "A high school girl once told me she kept a red doll in her room. After that, one by one, her family disappeared." By the time Kang-jin finished translating these, he was no longer convinced these were just stories. He became certain they were records, real events. Story 13. A dusty VHS tape found in a secondhand bookstore in Tokyo. It showed a red kimono-clad doll spinning slowly in someone's living room. The 3 people who watched the footage, they all reported strange symptoms in their right ear, and then they died. Story 14. A small-town funeral home. An undertaker collapsed after seeing a doll's hand resting beside a corpse. After that day, 4 employees of the funeral home developed unexplained paralysis, only in their right legs. One of them didn't survive. At this point, Kang-jin was overcome with terror. He wanted to shut the laptop, to stop reading, but he couldn't look away because Story 16 was titled with his exact home address. Story 16, Nerima 2 Chome, 19-6. A foreign exchange student living at this address begins translating horror stories and unknowingly starts to manifest the doll into the real world. That was his apartment. Every word exactly as written, not a single letter out of place. And then Kang-jin saw it. His own car accident, his mother's injuries, all of it already written in the final story. It was all right there, as if someone or something had written it in advance. Was it just a twisted prank? A trap made by someone who wanted to mess with him? Maybe. But it also detailed things no one else could have known. And so he scrolled to the final story. Story 17. The truth behind it all. Tokyo Firestorm. March 1945. During the Great Firebombing of Tokyo, a young girl was caught in the blasts. She died after losing her right arm and right leg. Her body was never given a proper burial, and the only thing that remained, the only item she had held onto until the end, was a red kimono doll. That doll had been her only friend. They say her spirit never left it. And from that day on, everyone who owned the doll began to suffer the same fate. Injuries, paralysis, deformities, always on the right side. And the curse didn't just stop at owners. It began to follow people. And anyone who fully translated the stories, they became the doll's next vessel, the cursed new host. That's when Kang-jin finally understood. By translating the stories, he hadn't just read about the curse, he had spread it. He tried to delete everything, wipe the laptop, burn the files. But the computer wouldn't even start. And somehow his printer began printing out images of the doll on its own. Terrified, Kang-jin packed his things and fled, returned to Korea immediately. But here is the strangest part. After he left, the stories kept appearing online, all of them, except the last one. Story 17 was never uploaded. So now I have to ask, who is uploading them? And who will finish the next translation? So, who do you think requested the translations? And that manuscript, was it really just a curse? Or was it something far worse? To this day, the truth lies buried somewhere deeper, darker. But what about you? As you watch this video, did your right eye twitch? Did your right arm feel a strange little tingle? Did something just barely out of sight make you feel uneasy? If so, the writer of the story says, don't dwell on this story. Don't say it out loud. And whatever you do, don't picture the doll's face. Because this story isn't over. Ooh, this story gave me literal chills. I think Japanese horror stories are just another level creepy. Okay, that is the end of today's story, and hope you guys sleep tight. And maybe tonight, keep the lights on, because who knows, you might hear clicking footsteps in front of your door. Okay guys, good night, bye-bye.